Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on The Merry Wives of Windsor, and today we get to hear from Mistress Page in Act 4, Scene 4. But yesterday we just finished Act 3, so we've got some catch-up that we need to do, and I'm sorry, but this is going to be a long one. So if you remember, Falstaff had gone to woo Mistress Ford, but he got taken out in a laundry basket and dumped in the river, and Mr. Ford was this close to finding him in the house, but then wasn't, but then reheard it, the whole story from Falstaff himself, and was very upset that he missed it because he knew the Falstaff was there, and then to not find him there. But Falstaff has been invited back to Mistress Ford's house because the mistresses Ford and Page are having a lot of fun messing with him. He's been invited back for this morning, so he is on his way over there, and then Mr. Ford is following him over there to once again try to catch him in the act. So Act 4, Scene 1, we start out with Mistress Page and Mistress Quickly, and they're taking William Page, who is Mistress Page's son, to school before they go over to Mistress Ford's house to do this whole, let's set Falstaff up for a second fall thing. And they run into Evans, who tells them that the school is actually closed. Evans is also the school teacher. And Mistress Page is like, well, I don't think my son is learning anything. So, can you prove to me that he's learning some stuff? And Evans proceeds to put William through a sort of impromptu oral exam. A lot of it is in Latin, which Mistress Quickly hears wrong. She hears it as dirty words and insults and that sort of thing, and she's kind of flabbergasted that this is what William is learning in school. But they do this whole cute little thing, and it's funny. It's sort of a filler scene that's just lighthearted and fun and malapropisms and that sort of a thing. And then that's the end of Act 4, Scene 1, when the ladies leave to go off to Mistress Ford's house. So Act 4, Scene 2, we are at the Ford's house, and we start out with Falstaff wooing Mistress Ford, but also checking to make sure that Mr. Ford is not due to come home right exactly now. And Mistress Ford says no, he's not going to. But then Mistress Page shows up, and Falstaff hides in the other room, and Mistress Page is like, oh, your husband is coming, and he's in such a rage because he knew about the basket and all of this sort of thing, and if he finds Falstaff, he's going to kill him, so it's a good thing that you don't have anybody here in the house with you. And Mistress Ford, and there is a beautiful little moment where Mistress Ford is like, you have to talk louder, because they want Falstaff to hear this little show that they're putting on in the other room. So Mistress Ford is like, oh no, it actually turns out that Falstaff is here. How on earth are we going to get him out of the house? So they do some brainstorming, should we send him up the chimney? Do we send him out in the laundry basket again? And Falstaff comes running out, and he's like, no, I am not getting in that basket again. So they finally decide that he should dress up as a woman, specifically a woman who sometimes is upstairs. It's the maid's aunt. Sometimes stays with the maid upstairs, because Mr. Ford really, really hates the maid's aunt, and also because the maid's aunt is the only woman that has clothing big enough for Falstaff. So Falstaff goes to put on one of those dresses, and Mistress Page follows along to help with the hats and the gloves and the accessories and all that sort of a thing. And Mr. Ford and real quick, before Falstaff has left the room to go put on her dress, Mistresses Ford and Page are like, hey, this is super fun. And Mistress Page is like, yeah, and actually your husband is on his way here. And Mistress Ford's like, let's do the laundry basket thing again, just for fun. I'll tell the guys that they have to take the laundry basket out. So Mr. Ford arrives right as the same servant guys are taking the same laundry basket out, and Mr. Ford is like, put that laundry basket down, I'm going to search it. Well, Mr. Ford has Page and Caius and Evans and Shallow with him, and he is so sure that Falstaff is in this laundry basket again, to be snuck out under his nose again, that he makes a big show out of stopping them and taking the clothes out and dumping the whole basket and stuff like that. And of course they find that Falstaff is not there, which is another blow to Mr. Ford. But then Mistress Page and Falstaff, who is now dressed as a woman, come in, and Ford thinks that it is the maid's aunt. So he hits her / Falstaff a couple of times and kicks her / Falstaff out of the house. Falstaff gets beaten at this point by Mr. Ford, but Mr. Ford thinks that he's beating an old woman and kicking her out of the house. Anyway, so Mr. Ford kicks Falstaff out of the house instead of finding him there. But Mr. Ford is not able to find him. And as the other guys are sort of mocking Ford for once again thinking that Falstaff was in his house but not finding him there. And Evans is like, yeah, I swear I saw a beard on the ant that was leaving. And so they're like, oh my God, maybe that was him. So the men all leave to chase Falstaff down, and or the ant, who's the same person, but they want to make sure that it is the same person. And Mistresses Ford and Page are like, oh my God, this is so much fun. This is great. But our husbands have probably had just about as much as they can take of this, so it's time for us to fill them in. But then maybe they can help us trick Falstaff just one last time, because it's so much fun to mess with Falstaff. And that's the end of Act 4, Scene 2, is them deciding to come clean to their husbands, but not quite being done messing with Falstaff. Act 4, Scene 3 is a really, really short scene, and it's just between Bardolph and the host of the Garter Inn, because apparently there's some Germans staying at the inn, and they've kind of taken the place over, and they want 3 horses, and the host is like, okay, fine, but I'm going to overcharge them. And that's the end of Act 4, Scene 3. I think, again, it's just sort of a filler scene to show that some time has passed before we start into Act 4, Scene 4. At the beginning of Act 4, Scene 4, we have the Fords, the Pages, and Evans hanging out, and the wives have told the story of what they were doing, and everybody thinks it's hysterical. The husbands are not offended, they're not humiliated, whatever. They're like, you were really clever, and that was super fun. And Ford is like, I'm never gonna doubt your fidelity ever again. Like, yeah, no, we totally trust you. That was fun. And hey, yeah, let's start planning this new way to get at Falstaff. So Mistress Page tells the story of Herne the Hunter, who's a guy who occasionally hangs out by a big oak tree wearing like horns and antlers and stuff like that. And he just sort of wreaks havoc in the forest. He's supposed to be like a really sort of scary figure. And the ladies have started to hatch a plan that involves Falstaff dressing up like Herne. And Mr. Page is like, so why? What exactly is the point of him dressing up that way? And Mistress Page says, that likewise we have thought upon, and thus Nan Page, my daughter, and my little son, and 3 or 4 more of their growth will dress like urchins, oves, and fairies, green and white, with rounds of waxen tapers on their heads, and rattles in their hands. Upon a sudden, as Falstaff, she, and I are newly met, let them from forth a saw pit rush at once with some diffused song. Upon their sight, we two in great amazedness will fly. Then let them all encircle him about, and fairy-like to pinch the unclean knight, and ask him why that hour of fairy revel in their so sacred paths he dares to tread in shape profane. So they're planning an ambush, is what's going to happen here. They want Falstaff to show up at this oak tree dressed like this hunter, but they're going to have like all the neighborhood kids dressed up like fairies and urchins and stuff like that, with crowns and candles on their heads, hiding nearby. So as soon as Falstaff gets there to meet Mistresses Ford and Page, all the kids are going to come and dance around. The ladies are going to be frightened and run away, and the kids are essentially going to attack Falstaff and start pinching him and beating up on him and saying, you know, why have you come to our sacred forest? All that kind of a thing. That's the plan. So the guys think that this is great. They think it's really funny. Evan says he's going to work with the kids to teach them their part, tell them how to be fairies. And Mistress Page says that Anne Page will play the Queen of the Fairies, so she'll be dressed all in white. Mr. Page takes a slight moment, and he's like, yeah, and since she's dressed in white, she and Slender can steal away to Eton and get married, because she'll already be dressed for it. She's going to be wearing all white. So then Ford decides that he wants to see Falstaff one more time as Brooke/Broom, so that he can get Falstaff's recounting of the whole being dressed as a woman thing. And Mistress quickly is sent to tell Falstaff that he's supposed to meet the ladies at this tree dressed like this hunter at midnight. So everybody leaves to go their own ways and get going on this plan except for Mistress Page, who's like, yeah, and since my daughter's going to be there all dressed in white, we're going to use this opportunity to marry her to Dr. Caius. Because she's already dressed in white, so she might as well get married. So we've got the Page parents with different marriage plans for their daughter, but planning to marry their daughter off on the same night, but at the same time, but to two different men. We've got Falstaff being set up for one final prank where he's going to get beaten up by a whole bunch of kids while he's wearing antlers. Yeah, I think Evans and Caius still also need to get back at the host. That one has not been resolved yet either. And we need to figure out what Anne Page really wants to do in terms of marriage. Does she want to marry Caius? Does she want to marry Slender? Last we heard, she kind of wanted to be with Fenton. So we got to figure out what's going on with him too. Anyway, but that's the end of Act 4, Scene 4. We've still got a few days left of this, and hopefully not as many marathon videos. Hopefully they'll be a little more reasonable going on forward. But this really is one of those plays that you have to see, and the fact that there aren't that many monologues in it means it's just supposed to sort of fly by and jive and be fun and quick and silly and farcical. And I don't know, maybe I'll have to do something else with this play as part of another project. But anyway, I'll see you tomorrow for more. Mwah.